company and a man who is asking for travel information. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good morning, Travellink. How can I help you?
Good morning. I live in Bayswater and I'd like to get to Harbour City tomorrow before 11 a.m.
Well, to get to Bayswater...
No, I live in Bayswater. My destination is Harbour City.
Oh, sorry. Right, so that's Bayswater to Harbour City. Are you planning to travel by bus or train?
I don't mind, really. Whichever option is faster, I suppose.
Well, if you catch a railway express, that'll get you there in under an hour. Let's see. Yes, if you can make the 9:30 a.m. express, I'd recommend you do that.
Great. Which station does that leave from?
Helendale is the nearest train station to you.
Did you say Helensvale?
No, Helendale. That's Helendale.
What's the best way to get to the Helendale station then?
Well, hang on a minute while I look into that. Now, it seems to me that you have two options. Option 1 would be to take the 7:06 bus from the Bayswater Shopping Centre to Central Street. When you get there, you transfer to another bus which will take you to the station. Or the second option, if you don't mind walking a couple of kilometres, is to go directly to Central Street and get straight on the bus going to the train station.
OK, which bus is that?
The 792 will take you to the station.
I guess the walk will be good for me, so that might be the better option. What time do I catch the 792?
There are two buses that should get you to the station on time, one just before 9 o'clock and one just after. But look, at that time of the morning it might be better to take the earlier one, just in case there's a traffic jam or something. The 8:55 is probably safer than the 9:05.
Yeah, I don't want to miss the train, so I'll be sure to get on the 5 to 9 bus.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
By the way, how much will I have to pay in fares?
Well, you can get a ticket on the bus for $1.80 cash, and you'll need $10 each way for the train. Wait, do you have a Travellink card?
No, but I can get one before tomorrow.
OK, well that'll make it considerably cheaper then. The bus will cost $1.50 each way, and the train will be... The train to Harbour City will still cost $10 because you'll be travelling during peak hours in the morning, so no savings there, I'm afraid. However, if you could come back at an off-peak time...
What does that mean?
Well, if you could start your return journey before 5 p.m. or later than 7:30 in the evening...
Actually, I wasn't planning on coming back till at least 8 o'clock anyway.
Oh, in that case, you can make quite a saving if you use your Travellink card. You did say you were planning to purchase one, didn't you?
Yes, I'll pick one up later today.
Good. That would mean your return train journey would only cost you $7.15 with your card.
Thank you.
Is there anything else I can help you with?
Actually, there is. Do you know if I can use the Travellink card on ferries?
If you're thinking of the Harbour City ferries that go back and forth between the North and South Bank, those are the commuter ferries, then yes. A one-way trip costs $4.50, but with your card you'd make a 20% saving and only pay $3.55.
So $3.55 for the commuter ferry. What about the tour boats?
You mean the tourist ferries that go upriver on sightseeing tours? No, they only take cash or credit card. They're not part of the Travel-Link company.
Oh, I see. I don't suppose you know the cost of a tour?
In actual fact, I do, because I took a friend on the trip upriver just last week. We decided on the afternoon tour, and that was $35 each, but I understand that you can do the whole day for $65.
Thank you. You've been a great help.
My pleasure. Enjoy your day out.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 2. You will hear an introduction about sports matches. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary White, the Secretary of the Exciting Sports Club. Welcome to attend Matches Arrangement Meeting. I know you are looking forward to a great season. Now, I'd like to give you a short introduction to our arrangement in this season. This season, we still have 2 competitions. One is tennis and the other is soccer. Let's start with tennis. There will be 6 teams competition. We hope the players' ages are between 16 and 22 years old. While the number of soccer teams is only 4 in this season, because we hope all players' ages are no more than 20 years old. Now, in this new season there are some changes. The first one is the venue. We will arrange all our matches for both the tennis and soccer competitions in Magic Park instead of Darry Park, which was used last year. Tennis matches will be arranged on Court 2 and Court 4 will hold soccer matches. Our match schedule: all tennis matches will be played on Sunday afternoons. All matches will begin at 2 o'clock. Soccer matches in this season will be played at 7 o'clock on Saturday evenings. The joining fee is still £30, including a new sport gear. We still offer a week of training session before formal match for our new players. There are 2 training sessions at 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. on next Friday and Saturday afternoon. The fee is only £12. Now, I'd like to introduce the coach of each training session, George Hanson, who has been supervised the tennis teams for over 4 years, will still be coach this season. While we will invite a good soccer coach who has enough patience and professional skills to work as this season's soccer coach. His name is Paul Batt. Now, look at questions 18 to 20. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 18 to 20. In addition, we offer some activities to thank all players. Please look at your brochure. There are some activities and their time arrangements. At the beginning, we hope to start the season with a barbecue dinner on next Saturday in Magic Park. I do really hope all players will go there to enjoy the dinner, and you may invite your relatives and friends. Of course they have to pay a little fee, with just £5. And then, after the final match in the season, we will vote this season's MVP, the most valuable player. The 2 players from tennis team and soccer team will gain an honour and a prize from our sports centre. This season we hope all players can send a confirm letter to us to ensure our match arrangement. So please write to us before the deadline. It is on Thursday, 18th of April. Our secretary, David Black, is in charge of collecting fees and your letters in this season. His room number is 214 and his phone is 332567. This is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3. You will hear a conversation between a student called Mary and her tutor, Mr. Hadstone. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello, Mr. Headstone. Is this the right time for our meeting?
Yes, it is. Thanks for coming in at such a late hour, Mary. I know you've had a busy day studying and will be keen to get home. And thanks for volunteering to run this project. It's going to help you develop and practice skills needed by teachers today. Field trips are getting more and more a part of school life. So as a student of education, it'll be wonderful training for you. It's really a great opportunity.
We did loads of field trips at school, so I've got a good idea of what sort of things we could do.
I expect so. But we're here to go through the basics of planning one, and the trip leader carries a load of responsibility. Right now, you're focusing on activities, but your main job is to consider the dangers and come up with ways of countering or avoiding them. There are lots of government regulations you won't have been aware of on your school trips, but they're just a guideline for your own planning. Some of those school trips you went on would have been pretty adventurous, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and your plan needs to be tailored to the kind of trip you're doing. On a well-planned and successfully led adventure trip, we don't often hear of problems, even though sometimes there's bad weather, for example, that a school party has managed to combat. That's because the leader created a well-thought-out hazard management plan.
Ah! I thought I'd just be taking my mates out on a trick. Now it's all paperwork.
Yes, well, that's why I called you in. We'll work on this together over the next few days. I just wanted to give you a heads up on what you'll need to think about. There are some aspects that every trip needs to consider, What do you think they might be?
Well, heavy rain or high winds, I guess, and any dangers in the terrain?
Yes, we call those the significant factors. And another important one is the makeup of your group. But you don't need to go overboard. There are some kinds of hazard that you won't need to think about at all. Things like hurricanes, earthquakes, radioactivity, or major diseases such as cancer. The official name for those is unlikely events, because they almost certainly won't happen.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Okay, so let's consider the hazards seen as most likely on a field trip into the countryside. Weather causes real problems. Overexposure to the sun or the cold, even the wind, can have a big impact. And of course, the weather can change very suddenly and without warning.
Yes, people can get into trouble in the hills if they don't bring extra layers of clothes and a jacket, even if they start walking on a hot day. Oh, and a raincoat too, of course. What's next then?
Well, let's think about possible activities and what you might need.
Yes, okay. Well, for hiking, of course, we need a first aid kit. Oh, and a decent topographic map of the area. And we need to make sure that more than one person can read it. I've run into lots of difficulties in the past with people who can't identify even major features, like rivers. And some people have no idea about contour lines. And I suppose a compass, too.
You'd need to list those. Then there are things that might be obvious but must be written down and considered seriously. For example, if there's a possibility of falling more than 2.5 meters, that's considered life-threatening. And I'm sure you would be aware of problems near the sea, like tides or high waves. And the trouble you can get into where there's a possibility of an avalanche or a mudslide or a flash flood if you're anywhere near rivers.
Yes. Well, I was thinking of an adventurous route for this trip. You know, that's always more fun. And it's such a cool feeling when you've achieved something really difficult.
Yes, okay, but then you need to consider who's going to be in your party. Don't go and plan things that are beyond the reach of most people, or you're asking for trouble. You need to take into account the physical strength and experience of the party as a whole. When you make your groups, make sure there's at least one person in each one who's been hiking a few times before.
Wow! There's a lot to write down, isn't there? I'm really keen to get started now.
Well, good, because there's a lot more detail to consider. For now, I'll just mention 2 more of the common hazards for high school trips in particular.
Yes?
The Ministry of Education website says don't use inexperienced volunteers. And don't allow student drivers to bring their own cars, or to drive anyone else's car for that matter.
Well, now I really have something to think about. Thanks, Mr. Headstone.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 4. You will hear a lecture's introduction to Insect Biology 101. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon and welcome to Insect Biology 101. I'd like to begin this course with a few remarks about good insects and bad ones. Bugs are all around us, and that's both a benefit and an annoyance, sometimes maybe even serious harm. First, let's talk about the good things that insects do for us. Probably the most important insect for humans, and maybe for all other life, is the bee. Bees help plants in the process of pollination, and thus are necessary to most flowers and fruit-producing trees. That is, they carry pollen from male flowers to female. If it weren't for bees, we'd have very few food plants and no fruit either. In fact, there would be no we. No less a thinker than Albert Einstein pointed out that, without bees, humanity would be dead within a year or less. We'd starve. It's that simple. That should maybe make us just a little humble. A little less dramatic is the fact that bees also make the honey we eat. Moreover, they produce beeswax, which is useful in candles and is also used as a first-rate furniture polish. Sure, these may not be vital to our lives, but they can serve as reminders of how important bees are. That's a point I keep coming back to in this course. Though, in all fairness, I should point out that butterflies aid in pollination as well as bees. Now, here in Michigan, what's the worst part of summer? Yep, that's right, mosquitoes. But I'm talking about helpful insects, right? So let's look at the dragonfly first. If there were no dragonflies, there would be even more mosquitoes. Dragonflies mainly eat mosquitoes and also a few other insects. Yes, that's right. They don't just fly around, and they also help to eliminate harmful insects. So the next time you see a dragonfly, don't you dare kill it. Now, let's talk a little about those harmful insects. Take the mosquitoes I just mentioned as an example. Not so many years ago, mosquitoes here in America weren't just annoying, some were even deadly. They carried malaria and yellow fever. My own ancestor, the Confederate General John Bell Hood, lived through the worst battles of Civil War, only to die at age 38 from yellow fever. A pest, not a bullet. Well, besides the mosquitoes, in summer there is also a kind of insect that never seems tired. Right, that is the fly. Before I go on talking, I must mention an African fly called the tsetse fly, which feeds on blood and can cause serious diseases in the people and animals that it bites. Besides, it is still a bearer of sleeping sickness, which affects around 300,000 people every year in Africa, and can be treated only with toxic drugs that are hard to administer. Worse still, the drugs sometimes don't work. Other insects, of course, destroy food crops. In China, for instance, locusts continue to be a danger to the harvest in some areas. Less important, but still annoying, moths eat people's clothes and dust mites slowly destroy carpets. Worse, but still in the home, termites or white ants eat wood, the wood of your house. If they are not stopped, they can eventually destroy the whole building. Usually they seriously damage a building before anyone even notices them. So, as we all know, insects can be a real trouble. So, what to do? You can go ahead and start killing harmful insects. In the early decades after the Communist Revolution in China, Chairman Mao encouraged the people to swat every fly they could see. Slogans on the walls of buildings called them little capitalists. But flies reproduce too quickly for this to be a long-term solution. For some decades in the West, to kill insects with chemicals seemed a good remedy. Unfortunately, chemicals can only be used in a limited area for a limited time. It's a small-scale solution. The insects come back. Worse still, some of the poisons used, like DDT, were found harmful to the environment. Many kinds of wildlife, like hawks, were harmed. And people in chemical-using rural areas have one of the highest rates of liver cancer in the world. It's no secret that chemicals remain harmful to humans. Like all species, insects adapt to their changing environments at an amazing rate. When a new chemical is introduced to their habitat, the insects that survive are generally the ones with some way of resisting the harmful effects. They then breed with the other survivors, and just like that, insects become resistant to most poison in a few generations. An insect generation, remember, is a couple of months at most. So again, we have to ask, what to do? Well, there are biological solutions. Some of these are pretty simple. One is destroying the insect's habitat. You take away their home or food. Cleaning your kitchen is the best way to prevent roaches. No garbage, no food. Getting rid of marshes and swamps eliminates mosquitoes. Other solutions might include bringing in dragonflies or bats in areas where mosquitoes are many. This is a cheaper alternative to chemicals. Biological methods like this also bring no extra pollution to the environment. But you have to be careful. If you change the environment too much, you might be hurting other forms of life accidentally. One recent method of controlling insect populations involves interrupting their breeding cycle. What does that mean? It means birth control for bugs. Insects are provided with food that makes them unable to reproduce. Since they can't have babies, the population disappears, or nearly so. And since no young are born, resistance is not a problem, with no young insects developing increased resistance. Interrupt the life cycle, eliminate the bug. It's clear that we must have an understanding of the life cycle of the insect. At least, that's the plan. We'll go into more detail as the course goes along. Now, I will stop here to see whether you have any questions or not.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Give it to me.